This week on Steadfast.
So I went back and I said, hey, it seems you're not completed this abortion. And he says, yes, I have. And I said, no, we're missing the head. And he said, go look in the trash. That right there, that word right there, the go look in the trash, to them, that was the most important thing that I learned at an abortion facility. The babies to them are trash.
Welcome to Steadfast, a pro-life podcast where we talk about how the pro-life movement is evolving and how you can participate. I'm your host, Sammy Carroll, Education Coordinator at Life Choices Women's Clinic in Phoenix, Arizona, and our prayer is that this podcast inspires you. Welcome to Steadfast. Hello everybody. Today on Steadfast, we are talking to Mayra Rodriguez, who was an employee of Planned Parenthood for 17 years, as well as an executive director of 3 locations. And she has an amazing story, but ultimately she was fired wrongfully, sued for wrongful termination, and she won. You can actually check out her case online, Rodriguez versus Planned Parenthood in Maricopa County. She won the case. It was just this amazing triumph for the pro-life movement. And Mayra, since working at Planned Parenthood, has devoted her life to the pro-life movement. And I hope that you really enjoyed this conversation with Mayra. Well, welcome, Mayra, to Steadfast Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's an overdue podcast. We've been talking about it, and the time finally came to it. It's God's time. That's what I learned about this podcast, that it's on God's time.
Amen. I feel like I always have dreams, I have my plans, and God's always like, okay, he's not necessarily laugh at my plans, but it's more like a pat on my back, like, okay, we'll get there. Can you tell us about yourself and about your family and just, who you are and how you got involved in the pro-life movement?
Right. I'm going to try to make it a short story. It's not easy for Mexicans to do that. We tend to go, make long story short. But so I'm a Mexican immigrant. I was born in Mexico City, moved to the United States when I was only 18. I went to high school here at Horizon High School in Scottsdale, then went to Scottsdale Community College. I was hired by Planned Parenthood as an immigrant, because they needed to attract the immigrant community. Back then, it was to help women on centers that have nothing to do with abortion. I dedicated my life to help their mission and their vision, without knowing exactly what I was defending. And my selfish side, that wanted that American dream. And that's how I worked for Planned Parenthood for 17 years. Yeah. I have 2 children. They live, one lives in New York City. She is 23. She graduated UC Davis and moved to New York City with Teach for America Corps, where she teaches in a charter school in the Bronx with low-income families. And then my son, he lives here in Phoenix, Arizona, and he is 20, almost 21. Oh. So it's funny because he's that generation that his birthday is the anniversary of 9/11, and we were just talking about it, how it feels, that every time your age is the anniversary of something so tragic for all of us here that live in this country. And he says, well, I don't know anything else, like since I've been born, it's always been 9/11. So now it's like, I feel bad, but it's part of what it is, right? So he wants to be a psychologist because he would like to be a children's therapist, which I think is awesome. And that's it. I remarried again, against all odds. I thought I will never get married again, but I did. And my husband and I together have 6 children. Like I said, 2 of them are mine and 4 are my husband's. Now we're a big happy family. I feel like a Bible story, when God, like I lost everything and then God just multiplied everything.
That's awesome. That's amazing. It's so obvious how proud you are of your kids. It's beautiful. So you started Planned Parenthood because you wanted to help women, right? You were started because you deeply cared for women. You still obviously do. I'm just saying that the mindset was never to help with abortions.
Never. So most of those years, like I said, I was defending this reproductive rights, the right to choose, the body autonomy, right? It's my body, my choice. Birth control. I will dedicate literally my 16 years to defend the Title 10 money that goes to Planned Parenthood for birth control, STDs, and all that happy stuff, preventive care, right? Which is the good side of Planned Parenthood. And you know that I will say that, I will be that, but I work for the good side. Where I work, I don't do abortions, and this is how I like defend myself, right? Every time someone says, but you're working for a baby killer, or anyone mention anything like that, I will be very quick to answer, but I don't do that. I save more babies than you do on the street. I actually said that to people outside, to Lean. Now my friend Lean, which we will get into it probably in a little bit later in the conversation, but I remember I said that to her. I said, I have saved more babies than you have. And today I think about my house. I'm sorry, I'm gonna say how stupid I was. Like how, what would I say that? When I got the job. So let me tell you a little bit about my background. So I grew up in Mexico City, big city, right, huge city. My mother was a social worker. She was the director of in a hospital, the director of the social worker department, right? I don't know what they will call it here, but that department oversees the OBGYN. So the ladies that will show up there, and they needed help with their insurance, or there was some issues, anything that social workers do, right? Mm-hmm. So I remember growing up in that hospital because, if you're sick, my mom will take me to work. If I'm on vacation, I remember running on the hallways of that. It's a huge hospital in Mexico City, right? And I remember wanting always to go with one of her fellow workers to the maternity ward to see the babies born, and people sometimes get shocked, like this is something I have ever spoken about, right? But I grew up watching these babies, at the nursery. It always attracted me. Women scared, right? It always attracted me. So my dream in Mexico was to become a doctor, to actually become an OBGYN. Obviously, that dream was crushed when I moved to this country, and I was, back then there was no Dream Act, so the dream of going to a university is far from accessible, right? Because I couldn't afford it. Even if I could afford it, I couldn't go, right? So then I had some studies on medical healthcare management, right? And then I had my medical lab technician diploma from Mexico City. So that's what Planned Parenthood hired me, right? So when my friend said, hey, they're hiring where I'm working at, my friend was just in the same situation as I was. She was an immigrant too. She said, they're hiring. We help women. Why don't you come work here? You like the medical field. And I saw that as an opportunity to actually do something that I wanted to do my whole life, which is work in the medical field and helping women. I mean, what's wrong with that, right? I get to help women. I get to help them. I remember when they told me you need to go into the Hispanic communities because Latinas, immigrant mothers are not used to taking care of their own bodies, right? And I was like, yeah, you're right. They never do, right? Yeah. So imagine, like, they care about my community, right? That's why I was being hired. It's like, we want to hire you because you're an immigrant and we need the immigrants to come to Planned Parenthood so they feel welcome. And I was like, oh my God, they care about my people. But how did I open my eyes? Well, after 16 years with them and getting the Employee of the Year award. So just so you know, I was an assistant director. Then I escalated and became the training coordinator for the state of Arizona. That means I trained everyone on their first 2 weeks of employment for Arizona. And the way I trained them, it was to put videos about their vision, about Planned Parenthood history, kind of injecting that ideology of who Planned Parenthood is and how great they are for society, right? And after that, I became the director of the first center, which was 32nd Street and Thunderbird, no longer exists. And then at the same time, they named me the director of Flagstaff, Arizona, which I was now the director of 2 centers, Flagstaff and North Phoenix. And then in 2016, they gave me Employee of the Year award because I was so great, so loyal, dedicated, 100% to the mission. And it was like, Mayra, we want you to be the director of the abortion facility in Glendale, the biggest abortion center we have in the state. I promise you, I went like, I don't think so. I don't want to thank you, but I'm good what I am. And they were like, well, Trump is going to remove our Title 10 money. And when that happens, we cannot guarantee that you will keep a job. So at that moment, and like I said, I make a lot of excuses, right, for being there for so many years. But at that moment, remember I said I was an immigrant, it wasn't so easy for me to move to another job. So I felt like they twisted my arm to take that job, you know, and I had to. So I thought I had to take that job, right? And then besides that, I said, deep inside me, I was like, well, I owe it to them, right? Because they give me an opportunity when no one else would have. You know, they give me the door to the American dream, you know. I have been having a job with benefits to take care of my children. So I owe it to them, right? And so I took the job and I became the director of the Glendale facility. Now, what I saw there opened my eyes and heart about abortion. And then my mind started changing. So I lasted 10 months as the director of that facility. And trust me, what I saw there was pretty bad, you know, and I stopped defending what I thought that it was helping women, but it wasn't.
Yeah. So when did it turn around? When did you start realizing? You mentioned in Glendale.
Well, I got hired as the director of the abortion facility, and then I started seeing the reality of abortions, right? So everything that the pro-life side has been saying, right? And then I will actually come out and be like, well, you're wrong. We don't do that here, right? I remember once I argued with my supervisor at the Glendale facility. I was a director, but obviously I had a supervisor overseeing all the clinics, right? Mm-hmm. He is the director of patient services. And I remember one day we had a meeting and I was arguing with him and I said, you know that the people on the sidewalk are actually right about what we're doing here. All we care is about money. And the argument came because a woman had no money to pay for her services and I let her go without paying. And I got in trouble for allowing her to leave without paying. And to me, it was like, I thought that's what we're here for. Like, do I hold her hostage? You know, do the service for her? Like, I was very confused, right? Because up until the moment I took over the Glendale facility, I never had to worry about that, Sammy. These Title 10 centers, if you know how they work, are Title 10 funded, which means federal money goes into those centers and they're preventive care. So obviously Planned Parenthood never cared if a patient lived without paying, if they didn't have money, but because the bill went to the government and government paid up for them. The moment that it came that it was Planned Parenthood money, which it was the abortion facility, it was no longer the same. So I was used to being able to tell patients, oh, it's fine. You can pay when you have money or make a payment plan or just come back another day and pay. Never got in trouble. But this time, at the abortion facility, I was getting in trouble for letting patients without paying leave, you know, but it was like in my head was like, well, I was helping them. I thought we were here to help them. Yeah. I remember that was one of the first things that I started noticing, that money was an issue there, right? The facilities where we didn't do abortions, I never got pushed to see more than 12 patients. I mean, if I saw 12 patients, yeah, man, good job, we don't care, right? Because the government pays. But at the facilities where we do abortion, it was, Mayra, you have to see 45 patients a day, 30 for surgical abortions and 15 abortion pills. By now, it's 2020, just so you know. Yeah. Now they're pushing them to see 20 and 20, or 25, 25, or even more pills than abortion surgical. So it was like, are you kidding me? All this time, they've been telling me, what do you do at the non-abortion facilities? What matters is 97% of our services. What we do at the abortion center is 3%. Like that. Wait a minute. I'm not that good at math, but this is not 3%. I mean, I only have to see 12 to 15 patients at the non-abortion, and you're telling me I have to see 45 patients a day, 6 to 7 days a week at Glendale. Every idea I brought up on how to do more than abortions, it was a no, there's no money in that, there's no money in that, there's no money in that. Of course not, because all the services, when they offer non-abortion related services, are under our tax-funded money. Otherwise, they won't offer them. That's one thing I also learned by being the director of abortion facility. Planned Parenthood itself, without any tax-funded money, will not be offering any other service because they make money on abortion. Abortions are money making, you know. The example I give people on my conferences or when I'm doing a talk on some sort of talk that I do for groups of students that are learning something. Right, or I do a lot of video conferences for other countries, and the way I explain it to them, it's, well, McDonald's doesn't make money on the Big Mac, contrary to what people believe. McDonald's doesn't make money on the Big Mac. Where do they make the money? On their fries, right? We know that. This is with abortion. They don't make money on everything else. They make money on abortion, and it's a reality. It's money making, especially if it's an abortion by pill. Can you imagine they sell that pill to the same cost of the surgical abortion, and the doctor literally only has to hand over the pill.
Could we talk about with like the money? I know that at the 40 Days for Life symposium, you and Ramona were talking about how you guys were trying to fudge, or other facilities were fudging the numbers.
So yeah, those centers, even though Planned Parenthood will argue that we don't tell them how many women to send, that's not true. They don't have a quota. So for example, all this time I said, oh, I'm not part of the abortion, right? I don't do abortions. But I had to refer them, right? Certain amount of patients that went through the non-abortion facilities had to be referred to the abortion center. Otherwise, something's wrong, right? If you're seeing 20 women at a non-abortion facility for pregnancy tests and none of them are going for an abortion, then you're not doing your job selling abortion, right? Remember, if you recall the symposium, I explained how we used to sell abortions, right? And how we'll train the staff to sell abortions, right? Like walk in that room with a drastic face, never congratulate the woman for being pregnant, never ever tell her you're happy that she's pregnant, because you don't know. You don't know if she's happy to be pregnant. So assume that she doesn't want her baby, literally, right? This is how the staff were trained. This is how they train me. This is how I train my staff and anyone who started working for Planned Parenthood in Arizona. Don't assume that she's happy pregnant. Assume that she's an unhappy pregnant person. And I never understood that until now. I get to analyze what that meant, right? So we learned from a very young age that a tragic phase is something negative, right?
Right.
And so then when you walk into a room to a pregnant woman and you tell her, oh my God, you're pregnant, then she already on her mind, this is not good. This is not good. And I'm going to have to do something about it. And then quickly jump into, well, you could have an abortion, but I don't want my parents to find out. They don't have to, right? They don't have to find out, right? For example, in the state of Arizona, we need parental consent, but there's ways to go around that parental consent. And guess what? Planned Parenthood has volunteers to help you do that judicial bypass so your parents won't ever find out, right? And it goes as far, Sammy, as telling them what courthouses will actually sign that judicial bypass. I remember that the courthouse right here next to 32nd Street and Thunderbird, which is around 32nd and Shea, the judges there were very conservative, so we wouldn't send them there.
Right.
We would send them to like a Glendale courthouse, right? And usually the funny thing, I will say the corrupted thing, it was usually the courthouses around the abortion facilities that had a judge willing to sign the judicial bypass without any problems.
Of course.
Right? So, and that's how we push for that, right? So yes, Ramona, if you recall, she worked in a referral center, which literally that's basically what they did. Pregnancy tests, refer them to abortion or other services, right? I remember they're telling me, so if you walk into the room and the woman like, you know what, I'm not sure I want to have an abortion, then you give her how easy it is to have the abortion and whatnot. But if you walk into that room and that pregnant woman says, no, I'm happy I'm pregnant. Okay, here's your list of whatever you can go and quick paperwork of how to take care now that you're pregnant, and goodbye. Like if she had any question, well, I did have a question. Sorry, you gotta go somewhere else, right? But if it was a woman seeking an abortion or unsure of her decision, spend time with her.
Pounce.
Talk to her. Sell the abortion, right? And that's what we did. Like Ramona said, she knew that she couldn't refer them to like a pregnancy crisis center, right? Because then she will get fired. Most staff knew that. I knew that. If you recall, I told you that I actually went undercover to Life Choices because I knew that if I send patients there, I will be in trouble. But we find out a way to do that because I wanted to help women.
Yeah, tell me about that. Tell me about you going undercover at Life Choices.
Well, my friend was pregnant and I decided that I have heard too many bad things about it. Like those places are not real, don't refer women then. They get brainwashed, they get pushed to believe in Jesus. It's all about religion. They tell them they're going down to hell. They show them fake videos about abortion, and I have been hearing this, but I have never actually met anyone, obviously, right? I have never met a patient that went to Life Choices, for example, and came back and said, hey, they torture me there. I never met that, right? Because most women that go there will never come back. So I was like, I'm wondering how I can do this. So I remember my friend was pregnant, and then she wanted to see how far along she was, right? So obviously, she's my friend. I'm not gonna refer her to come to the place that I work at because I knew that the people that work at Planned Parenthood are not actually ultrasonographers, are people like me that got trained by somebody else to do quick ultrasounds. I don't want my friend to be at risk. So I told her, hey, how about, I know about this place. They help women that are pregnant. They do ultrasounds, yada, yada. Would you mind if I tag along with you? Because I actually want to see what they say. And she said, yeah, of course. So I went with her to Life Choices. I remember the one on 7th Street and Hatcher. And that was the closest to the one in North Phoenix. And I was with her. I mean, no one recognized me. I thought they may recognize me, but I remember, I wasn't wearing the scrubs. I put my hair in a different way, and I remember even wore fake glasses, not like sunglasses, like just glasses that have not um, um, augmentation or anything, right? So I remember just walking in there, and not asking any questions that I wouldn't sell myself out, but asking just to be with her through the entire process. And my surprise was they say, yes, of course, you can be with your friend, which is the one number thing that Planned Parenthood didn't do. Nope, nope, she needs to go by herself, right?
Yeah, if she's
And
alone,
you need
then
to
you can
find
probably change your mind.
and you need to put your phone away and you need to turn your phone off. And then, I actually told people there's actually signal blockers at Planned Parenthood facilities. And they said it's to make sure that their internet works better, right? But when people always post on their Google reviews, the internet never works. I'm like, of course not. They don't want you to be able to
Oh my
post
gosh.
anything, right? So their Wi-Fi never works. And so I went with her and walked through her entire process as Life Choices. I was like, oh my God, it's nothing what I have heard. Like nothing at all. Like they actually were very kind. Didn't even, they spoke about Jesus just after asking her what her beliefs were, what her religion was, right? And then they give her all this attention and told her what else she needed help. Like they actually paid attention to her and her concerns. I remember she had a concern about having a miscarriage. It was her first pregnancy, and it was really hard for her to get pregnant. So I remember they sat down, something we didn't do. Something like we don't take the time to do that because they don't do prenatal care at Planned Parenthood, right? They don't even take the time to do that in an abortion, right? Abortion is 15 minutes. The doctor didn't even talk to the patient. So I was in shock. After that, I started referring patients to Life Choices. I remember talking to Sheila, and she's like, oh, so that was you, because people will show up and be like, oh, Planned Parenthood sent me that. Are you sure? Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. So what year was that?
Oh my God, if I recall correctly, this was about 11 years ago.
Oh wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
let's talk about it. When did you get out? How did you get out? Tell us about that, how that happened.
Well, like I said, I became the director at the end of 2016. This is December of 2016. By now, I'm managing 3 centers, okay? Flagstaff, North Phoenix, and Glendale. And obviously, I had to divide my time in all those 3 centers. I had team leader at each center, so that I rely on. At the Glendale facility, it's where I spend most of my time. I was the first one there and the last one there. A quick funny note on that is that I remember on my first day of employment there, I'm like, okay, fine. So I took over this center. I don't know how to give less than 100% of myself, so I'm gonna do the best I can, for these women and for my employees, right? So I'm gonna show up there early, be the first one. That way they see, the example. The center director is the first one. I wasn't the first one there. Lynn was there. Lynn was already praying, ready out of her car when I showed up on my first day. And now I have seen Lynn back when I applied for my job. Okay, she was praying outside of the sidewalk on Montebello on 7th Street. I remember asking the HR director, who's that lady? What is she doing? She's like, don't go in there. We can't help you. And I brushed her and I went in like, oh, okay, that's weird, lady. Right? So I remember asking them, they're like, don't worry about it. It's just a crazy lady that plays on the sidewalk. Don't pay attention. That's all she does. Don't talk to her. Don't ever engage with her. You'll get fired if you talk to her. I remember hearing that. So when I showed up to Glendale and I saw Lynn, I was like, okay, she's still here. She must have
Commitment.
nothing to do. I'm like, she's still alive and well and standing and praying, and the first one, right? So then, a lot of the staff, that it was most of the staff appreciated Lynn. Just so you know, most of the staff are not mad at the people at the sidewalk. They actually, something that people don't talk about is that they actually feel safe with the people on the sidewalk. Why? Because if you remember the incident in Colorado, and this is something the media hardly ever talks about, but this is the insight from the employees at that facility. The incident in Colorado, that gunman that came in and shot at people at that Planned Parenthood, a lot of the staff that were there, they were helped out by the people praying outside when they rushed in through the back door. And people don't talk about it, but it makes them feel like if someone came in there like violently and something got out of hand, they have no doubt that the people praying the sidewalk will come and help. So people, and then like I said, the staff there didn't mind Lynn at all because they knew Lynn never ever bothered them. So, but she was the first one there, not me. So that's when Lynn and I became not friend, but friendly. Like I will be like, good morning, Lynn. And then she eventually learned my name. She's like, good morning, Mayra. The one day she saw that my mother put a rosary on my card. Like I said, we're being strong Catholics. And when my mother found out that I'm the director of abortion facility, my excuse of, Mom, don't worry, I don't do abortions, was no longer there. So she started praying for me not to have the job, and she put a rosary to protect me. And that's when Lynn realized that I was Catholic. She's like, how could you work here? How could you work here? You're Catholic. And I knew she was right. I didn't want to talk to her about that. But I remember every time the abortionists will be like, call the cops on that woman. I'll be like, what is she doing? She passed the line. I said, I'll go talk to her. Now we'll go and talk to them and be like, hey, Lee, I don't want to call the cops. They have more important things to do than come to Planned Parenthood, right? But the abortionist, she just bullied me. She knew I was Catholic too. And she'll be like, you should be outside praying with them instead of being here. I remember like all the time.
Who was that?
The abortionist. If you have ever been there at the Tempe facility, she's gone now. She's in another facility. I believe she is at the Goodrick facility on McDowell, whatever that other abortion facility they have there. It's not Planned Parenthood. And her name is Belinda. And I remember she would just bully me about my religion and being Catholic and being Christian. She was an atheist, and she constantly will do that. So, but
interesting that the atheist was calling you out on being hypocritical, where it's like, it's almost like you have to wonder if she does have any inner turmoil about that,
that's one thing I learned from being with abortionists is that they think they're God. Most of them don't believe in him, and they think that they get to decide who lives and who dies. Yeah. Right. So, but what I started seeing was the damage in women, right? Besides the reality of the abortionists, right? How they treated women like just a number. I started seeing what abortion really meant. That it wasn't safe, no matter how many times they say that it's been safe and legal in the United States since 1973. That's not true. There was no way to make abortion safe. It's a blinded surgery. And what do I mean by that? I mean about the complications that go unreported, the perforations that happen daily. Okay, I'm not talking about once in a while a woman got perforated. No, I got to see daily perforations done on women. Most of the time, the abortionists didn't even realize they had perforated a uterus. They didn't know. Why? Because it's a blind surgery. They insert this very pointy instrument inside this woman's body, and they don't know when they're actually poking the walls of the urine walls. So then I got to see the incomplete abortions, right? And then there's this case that most people get shocked from my story, and that's a 40-week baby. It was a 19-year-old girl. I still remember that she used to go to ASU North Campus, like they call it on Glendale. And she was 14 weeks of gestation. Her abortion went on like a usual one. And after that, the abortionist stayed behind to insert an IUD. Now, the state of Arizona has a very strict legislation that says that an abortionist cannot say the abortion has been completed unless himself, along with the rest of his staff, went into the POC room, the process of conception room, and put the puzzle together. That means 2 legs, 2 arms, a torso, and a head, right? 2 hands. So unless he saw every body part accounted for, that's when he can mark on the chart completed without problems. But in this case, he needed to see a patient every 15 minutes. Remember, 45 patients a day. So every 15 minutes, and it's like he was going to be there all day. Literally, this is what he will say. I didn't go to school to be a doctor to work 12 hours. So they have zero liability. No one's after them for anything. They hardly ever supervise them, literally, right? Because I learned that the abortion industry, out of all those industry, are the ones that no one even, persecutes. No one even goes to see if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. How did I learn that? Because just so you know, the health department will actually give us a time frame for their inspections. So I will get literally like in the next week, between this time and this time, the health department inspector will stop by. They're going to need this many charts of early abortion, this many charts of this many abortions. I will literally get heads up when the facility will be inspected. Exactly. I'll be prepared with everything. And I mean, one thing I always defended is that as a director, I make sure that my facility was up and running. So when they tried to say, I make sure that I was up and running, but if there was any problems on the charts, literally the legal department will go over them before I hand them over to the inspector because they had heads up, right? So there were complications not reported. There were patients statutory rapes unreported, like not calling the police when they were supposed to. That 14-week baby, the abortionist left the head inside, so it was an incomplete abortion. The staff member came out and said, Mayra, I already told him, he's not listening, he's moving on to the next room. I don't know what else to do, it's incomplete. He already inserted an IUD, he's going to fire me, but I don't know what else to do. This girl was a medical assistant. She had only been working in the field for a couple years, because that's one thing Planned Parenthood is really good at. They hire newbies, they just call it newbies, right? Or people like me that know that no one else, that it will be very hard for you to get hired somewhere else, right? And then they pay you a salary that only with so many years of experience you can even dream of having, right? And they do this even with nurses right out of school, right? So she came out and said, she knew the importance. She knew how bad it was for that girl with an IUD to have an incomplete abortion. And she told him, and he still didn't care. So I went back and I said, hey, it seems you're not completed this abortion. And he says, yes, I have. And I said, no, we're missing the head. And he said, go look in the trash. That right there, that word right there, the go look in the trash, to them, that was the most important thing that I learned at an abortion facility. The babies to them are trash. The woman is just a number. They don't care. And the baby is just trash. Who cares? They're going to go in a trash bag and get, they get burned with all the trash around the hospitals. And then that's where they go. They go with the human waste of the rest of the medical waste from the hospitals and other facilities. And so go look in the trash, he said. And that's when we started an argument. So, I mean, long story short, he did another ultrasound. He did find the head right above the IUD. So that 19-year-old had 2 abortions literally that day. They aspirated her twice, scraped her twice. And they didn't even mention to her, he refused to document her chart. He actually documented abortion completed without complications, which then I brought up to my supervisor immediately. They just kept giving me the runs around. Every time I complain about them, they will be like, oh, Mayra, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. Just do your job, And sure after that, and when I say sure after, literally like a few days later, they fired me. And that's what started all this.
So tell me how you ended up getting fired. It's a crazy story.
So remember I told you I was managing 3 centers, right? So at this point, I had to split my time between those 3 centers, right? I had to supervise them all. So let's say they go like, hey, Mayra, because Trump took away the money for title, we're closing down your North Phoenix facility. You need to go down there and pack the clinic. So I'm like, I have a staff to do that. No, we want you to do that yourself. We need it well done. And I'm like, this week, right? The same week I argue with him. And then that same day, that the next morning, they're like, we need you to pack the clinic and clean it all up. And I'm like, okay. I thought that was weird because I had a staff to do that, right? But I went in there and started cleaning, and then they said, okay. And then, so let's say this was a Sunday. Then they sent me to do it on Monday. And then October 3rd came, and then they called me for a meeting at the headquarters, right? So after I was done packing and cleaning up the clinic, I went into this meeting, and then I show up there, and then literally go, hey, while you were gone, we found narcotics on your desk in Glendale. And I'm like, but I'd be gone. There's been someone else in my desk. And they're like, oh, but it's your fault. It's your office. They literally, and then I knew that something was wrong. I knew it. But you know what? I had a feeling. On my way driving to the meeting, I had a feeling because a couple of my staff had heard rumors on the center, that they have heard the other abortionist saying, well, we just got to get rid of her or something like that, right? So I knew that there was something coming up. They were cooking up something. At the same time, I was preparing myself. I had made copies of all the stuff that I had accused him of. I had made copies of all the emergency room reports that we had received on these women having perforations. And I mean, this was like a movie. I promise you. They fired me on October 3rd, and then literally on my way home, I texted one of my staff members. This is what I said, and this is the first time I talk about it. I said to her, hey, they fired me. And she's like, I know. And I'm like, and it's because I accused Dr. Richardson. I've been talking about the stuff, the dirty stuff he's been doing. She put, I know. And I said, well, good thing I have proof of all this. And she's like, yeah, it's on your desk. And I said to her, yes, before the end of the day, make copies of it, right? And bring them with you so you can give them to me. And she says, definitely, I will do that for you, right? Well, I know that this staff member actually probably shot me in the back, because next thing you know is that by they fired me around 12, and by 4 o'clock they showed up, literally management, right? Like the BPs, right?
Oh, wow.
The director of human services, the BP of patient services, and another BP showed up to my office and literally shredded everything without even looking. The staff text, I mean, that's something we had as proof on part of our lawsuit.
Yeah.
Right? That we have text messages from them that says, Mayra, they're in your office shredding everything.
Oh my gosh.
I knew that staff member had literally turned her back on me because she's the only one that knew that I kept copies.
So you were fired and then you began a lawsuit for a wrongful termination. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I get fired. And then remember I told you I'm an immigrant. So I'm like, what can I do against the giant corporation? I mean, this is a multinational, multi-billionaire corporation. What can I do against them? It's just me. A former co-worker stopped by the center. She used to go, I mean, she worked for Maryville Hospital. Every now and then she will swing by there and stop by and buy me a coffee or invite me for a coffee or something. So she stopped by there. I totally forgot it was the week that she stops by. And she went in and they told her that I'm gone. So she went on site, and then she actually knows Lynn. And she talked to Lynn and said, hey, have you seen my friend Mayra? And then she's like, no, she's been gone for a week. And then she's like, well, they said they fired her. And I'm surprised because she's a really good employee, right? Loyal to them. And I don't see why they would have fired her unless something really bad happened. And then she's like, well, see if we can talk to her, see if she needs anything. So my friend calls me up. And then I say, yes, I've been fired, yada, yada. They set me up, the blah, blah. And she's like, well, Lynn would like to talk to you. Do you want to connect with her? And I said, you know what? Yes. So then I connected with Lynn. And then Lynn invited me for lunch and then invited me to heal and find healing, spiritual healing. She took me to Father Klein. And then the frustration was still there. What can we do? What can we do? So along, like the community, Sheila, Lynn, Father Klein, we found my lawyer, Tim Kesey, which I always say is thanks to a woman.
I actually went to school. I graduated with Tim Casey's son.
Oh, Joe Kesey, my good friend.
We were
talk all the time.
That's awesome. It's a small world.
he's helping me write the book.
Really?
Hopefully, yeah,
I
he's helping me the trial side.
Yeah, he actually I had his book, his first book that he wrote, I think maybe as a freshman in college or even a senior in high school. I had his book in my office here, but that's awesome. So you're saying, sorry, I got excited because I was like, I know
No, it's
termination.
okay. So I always say this thanks to a woman, because we went knocking on doors, and then none of the doors were like, yeah, we can help her. First of all, because obviously my story sounds like a novella. A novella is a soap opera in Spanish, right? And it's like this big novella, and they set me up, they planted narcotic, they accuse me, but the reality is because they are covering the abortion, it literally sounds like a movie, right? And then so finally someone suggested Team Casey, and Sheila and Lynn called Sheila Casey, right? And they were like, well, and then Sheila Casey called her husband and say, well, can you hear her out? And I always say thanks to her, because it's thanks to her, like, please hear Mayra out, her story, or going to his office and just imagine. I'm like, what are my chances this guy is going to believe me, right? This huge novella, this huge Mexican novella presented to him. And he looks at me and says, I believe you. And I was like, you have no idea. That day I felt a weight taken over my shoulders, because I knew Sheila and Lynn believed me. I knew that. And I knew most of the people we talked to believed me. But then knowing that someone that loves the law and knows how hard it is to prove cases like this says, I believe you and I'm willing to defend you, to take on your case, that was so much hope and faith, right? It took the faith on him, and then a lot of praying with Father Klein, and everyone that helped me. Father Klein has been amazing, and another day I have to tell you our whole story about together, because it's like a whole other book. But the healing, at that moment, it wasn't more about being revengeful. It wasn't more about wanting a revenge. It was more about finding justice, but not justice for me only, but for those women. They deserve to know the truth and why I needed that. Well, Planned Parenthood, and you know how they operate. How easy it is for someone. I mean, look at David Delighton. He had the proof, he had the videos, and still look at him. Look what they have done to him and his team. So it's really hard to go against someone, and I needed that legal proof. I needed something that says, yes, they did this, not because I wanted to be like, yeah, I'm proving Planned Parenthood wrong. Well, yes, I wanted to prove it. But I needed that legality of it, because obviously my word will mean a lot to the pro-life movement, yes, but the side that we want to convince that something's wrong, without the legal proof, we're not being convinced. I always, every time I have an argument with someone online, on Twitter, on Instagram, or whatever, I always send them my legal case, Rodriguez versus Planned Parenthood, Maricopa courtroom. Like, there's no way you can defeat that, right? There's no way. And then, and that's how it all started. So we started a wrongful termination lawsuit under the Whistleblower Protection Act. Yes.
So you were with Planned Parenthood for 17 years and you had this community, and then you were fired. Did your community just disappear overnight? Did you, how was that healing, even from a loss of community, but also kind of going against your community, especially once you started this lawsuit?
Yeah. So, I mean, all the places, like literally all the rapport I had built with all these communities, right? Like, for example, all these immigration centers, right? That I have always referred people to, Chicanos por la Causa. And, I'm not going to go and name all of them, La Raza and all these organizations that help immigrants. I reach out to them and the door was shut on my face, right? Not to mention that when you work in a place, full time, and I work over 50 hours a week, that's your home. Literally, the people there are your family. I mean, these people came to my kids' parties. I went to their kids' parties, their weddings. I knew everything about their life. They knew everything about my life. And the betrayal, that has been one of the hardest parts of my healing process, to deal with the betrayal. It took me a lot to trust people again, because they all turned their back on me. I mean, one thing I'm grateful is that during the trial, every time they testified, they all mentioned that I was a loyal and a good employee, that I was fair, that I was a good director. They always said that. But the moment of truth, when they were questioning about the incident that happened with the abortionists, it's always, I don't know what she's talking about. I don't recall. I don't remember. That's a famous phrase on the lawsuit. I don't recall. I don't recall. I don't recall. That way you're not lying, but you're not telling the truth.
Right.
So, and that was a very sad part, even from that person that I told you that came to my office, and brought up the concern about it. I mean, on the first time she testified, she says, "Oh, I remember something like that happening, right? Something like that happened." But then after, when she testified during trial, she's like, "I don't know. I think I got it confused." She tried to change it, like all of them during trial tried to change their testimony. And that was very sad for me to see. It was very sad for me to see that it was easy for them to commit perjury. Literally, they didn't care. I admitted everything I had done wrong. Every time they say, "Well, you were undocumented and you were working there." Yes, I was undocumented. My employers knew that. When the HR director hired me, she knew I was an undocumented person. She knew it. I show all my Mexican credentials, but that's what helped me. That when Planned Parenthood bring my employee file to the trial, it was all my Mexican's credentials. So it's like they couldn't deny that they knew I had gone to school in Mexico. I had just moved here and all that stuff,
Yeah, and that's actually a logical fallacy. They were just trying to attack your person, your character. That's not actually addressing the issue at all.
Well, but it was easy, they thought that they were, this is what I'm thinking they were thinking. We're in a conservative state where people hate immigrants. So if we just use that card, we'll get rid of her. And they actually thought that they could just deport me and get rid of my case. That was the actual strategy and how they planned to dismiss my case, by getting me deported. So thankfully that didn't happen. I'm a legal resident now. Actually, this December, I will submit my application to become a U.S. citizen. So pray for me.
Oh, I will.
And next year, as soon as I become a citizen, we'll have a big party.
Yes. I was going to say, so when are we celebrating?
Exactly. As soon as I get approved and get my sworn in, oh my God, we're throwing a huge party.
Oh, please.
My excitement is that I will be able to vote 2024, and that vote will be pro-life.
Oh, yes. And that will definitely, that's going to be like the topic of this election, I'm sure. How did you go about healing and coming back to the church after all of this?
Well, like I said, Father Klein helped me a lot. Lynn and Sheila, I did a lot of talking to them. And then I became a member of And Then They Were None, which is Abby Johnson's ministry. Abby Johnson started this ministry a few years ago with the idea that the abortion workers need a place to go, and if then all the abortion workers leave the industry, and then there were none, there will be none to take care of abortions, right? So let me just tell you, now we're over 600 former abortion workers who are part of her ministry, and they have a different healing. So there's a lot of healing on organizations that help abortion women, right? Women that had an abortion or abortion survivors. But the healing towards an abortion worker is different. Because, I mean, it took a lot for me to understand that my excuse was, I'm not part of the abortion industry. When I work, I do good. I'm on the good side, right? For many years. But I needed to understand and accept that I actually, whether it was consciously or subconsciously, I helped the killing of millions of babies through my 17 years of working at Planned Parenthood. And when you realize that, the weight of that guilt comes to you. Actually, on June 24th? Yep. When the Robbie Wade was overturned, if you recall, I started my testimony like that at the symposium. I look at all the videos, all the news clips, and all the pictures of all these kids rampaging in the streets and angry, and you're taking a right to an abortion, right? And then I look at so many young faces, and then it got me thinking, how many of those I went into their school and talk about this? How many of them, it's because of me, they're there? That guilt really weighs you in. And you have to deal with that, because now you're in a redemption. I've been redeemed. but not because I've been redeemed, I'm gonna forget that I ate towards that I helped, that I planted those seeds, even on my own children. I was one of those crazy ladies that had her daughter in a stroller screaming, "My body, my choice." My daughter attended her first women's march with me, screaming that to her lungs because of me. And that's one of the things that it's really hard, like you planted that seed on many people around you that believe in abortion because you told them. I told them it was okay. It was safe. I worked there. It's safe, right?
Yeah.
That's not true. What you hear on the news is not true. Even my poor mother, right? What you hear on the news is not true. That's not true. They're making all those stories up because they hate us, right? Because Planned Parenthood is so good that people just have to make things around because they hate it. So that it takes a lot to heal, and when you find that healing with other people that have gone through that, and that's what we have at this ministry. A lot of them had abortions. I have never had an abortion. I actually had a miscarriage, so my pain from losing a baby is different, and then connecting the two dots, right? So it's a different healing, and I work a lot, but I'm going to tell you the key word is Jesus. Going back to my church and my Lady of Guadalupe. I mean, I'm a devoted Catholic to the Lady of Guadalupe. I grew up in Mexico City. I always say to people, even atheists love the Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico, because she's just our patroness on Mexico. So I give all the credit to both of them for my healing, the support of my family, my community, which means my church. The biggest challenge was to be able one night to pray for that abortionist, and finally I've done it for the last couple years, I think. Finally, I have prayed for him. I have prayed for Planned Parenthood. I have even prayed for the doctor Belinda Beck that I told you about, that God help her see that her ways are not going to get her to where she wants to be in eternity. But I think part of the healing is knowing that you forgive others, because just like me, they don't know what they're doing. They're blind. And even if they know what they're doing in their mind, some of them really think that it's okay, that really think that they're helping someone, right? By killing the child, we're helping something. I always tell people that not everyone's bad. These people think that they're actually doing something good for their unborn, saving them from a world of suffering, right? So in their heads, like I told you, they think they're helping someone. Someone is being helped by this abortion. Whether it's that woman or the baby to be born. I remember the abortionist that I told you about. She said one day she walked out of the room and she said, "One less crackhead in the world because of me." Because the mom was a drug addict. She was very proud that she had killed a drug addict, a future drug addict. Instead of finding the help for these women, it's easier to say, "Oh, I don't want her to have children because we don't want," it's the Margaret Sanger all over again comment. We don't want them to have children because if she's a drug addict, her child for sure will be one. I got the pleasure of visiting Waco, Texas Women's Prison while I was there in last month. I told them that during my research of visiting them to see what else can I talk to them about. I told them that actually the abortion industry says that abortion reduces crime. And I give a few seconds for them to sink that in. And they were like, wait, how? And I said, well, because according to them, the bad seed are not being born. So bad women have abortion, therefore, the women in prison have abortion, therefore bad seeds are not going to be fruitful, right? Like a child will not be born. What a way to tell women you don't believe in redemption, like you don't believe that a woman that was put in a bad situation can actually come out of it and her child can come out of it. No. And I will send you the article. It was shocking to know that but I mean, as you know, now they even said abortion even helps climate change.
What? Okay. Yeah,
I will send you all those links.
Yes, please do. That's heartbreaking. I'm very much a believer of it came from high school. We read Play as a Public, and it basically, if you care about someone, you want them to know that they're doing something wrong so that they can redeem themselves, so that they can turn around and become better. And so I definitely that resonated with me. That's so sad. And just, I can't imagine being someone in prison, hearing that, and just feel the feeling of deflation. I feel like if someone really had no hope for me, or no,
Exactly.
yeah, good. Praise God. Well, thank you so much for coming on this podcast and sharing your story. You're so brave. I just have to tell you, you are an inspiration. So thank you so much for all the work that you do.
Thank you. Every time I hear someone says you're so brave and everything, it's kind of sad, actually, right? Because that means that I only did what's right. I spoke the truth,
Right.
and
Yeah.
speaking out the truth should not be a choice but an obligation. And I hope that what is courageous to do, it's the normal, it's the norm. Speaking
Right.
up should be a norm. And that's what I want my story to be the example of, that people can speak up.
We hope that you've enjoyed this conversation with Mayra. The next episode is a conversation with Steve Carlin from 40 Days for Life. And Mayra and 40 Days for Life have a wonderful relationship. I got to meet both of them at the 40 Days for Life symposium. So tune into that episode. And Mayra pops up at the end of that episode as well, because she has some words about sidewalk counseling that is very important to hear. And now it's time for a little segment we like to call
You Make Baby Jesus Laugh. Or Sammy's preference, You Make Baby Jesus Laugh. Hi, I'm Alex, Sammy's husband, and this is a segment where we find funny stories on the news and tell them to each other, and try to get each other to laugh in the same way that baby Jesus would probably laugh at these stories. Mine is a wacky one from Maddock, North Dakota, wherein a woman, we've all heard of emotional support animals. Now, evidently this woman, 38 years old, named Erin, was charged with misdemeanor counts of providing false information to law enforcement, tampering with physical evidence, and unlawful possession of fur bearers, which apparently is something that I did not know about, but she is facing criminal charges for bringing a wild raccoon, into a North Dakota bar, prompting state health officials to issue a warning about potential rabies exposure. Friends, do not bring a raccoon into a bar.
or anywhere, really.
In North Dakota.
Oh.
Or anywhere.
But in other states, it might be okay. Wonder what kind of drink the raccoon would order. Was she just, was it in her purse, just in her backpack?
She found the raccoon on the side of a road 3 months ago and named it Rocky. They were nursing the animal back to health with plans to release it back to the wild. Unfortunately, that did not happen to this poor animal.
Oh no, what happened
Though
to
it
the
did
animal?
test negative for rabies.
What happened? Oh, the raccoon died, huh? Anyway, to my story. My headline is, Don't Cook Your Chicken in NyQuil. FDA issues warning against social media challenge. So thanks to TikTok once again, people are apparently cooking their chicken in NyQuil, which is just, I don't really have words, actually. It's been pretty viral news, so a lot of people may have already heard about this, but it originated in 2017, but, hit TikTok this week, and people have been cooking their chicken in NyQuil. And the FDA had to get involved and said, hey, this is actually really bad for your lungs, and not only is it unappetizing, but, this is harmful to your body.
It's Gen Z Tide Pods.
Yeah, seriously, come on, guys. When are we gonna learn?
Was it called NyQuil Chicken Challenge, though? 'Cause
Yeah.
That's always something wacky.
It's
like
something,
that.
yeah, NyQuil Chicken Challenge, I think. Wow, that just rolls off the tongue. Cooking poultry and cold medicine is a bad, dangerous idea.
I roll right
That-
out of your stomach if you try to try.
It says, so cooking poultry and cold medicine is a bad, dangerous idea that few people seem to be aware of until the government warning attracted media coverage. I'm like, wait, so are you saying that people weren't aware that this was a thing, or people were unaware that it was a bad idea?
Don't crush up your prescription drugs and put them on your filet mignon.
Oh my gosh. I think that might make baby Jesus actually cry, not just laugh. I think he's probably like, why? I gave you chicken. You're born in time of modern medicine. Get it together. Anyway, we're gonna put this on our Instagram at the Steadfast Podcast, and we invite you to vote because, yes, we are competitive. Alex might say that I'm the competitive one, but we both are. Our families can attest. Our game nights are brutal, but we're quiet about it. We're kind of like, we're cool, we're laid back about it, but inside,
So
the
now
inner
Sammy wants to
turmoil.
bring it to a public forum.
Yeah. We were quiet about it. Anyway, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode, and we will talk to you guys next week.
Goodbye.